So, the Bob's Burgers movie. So, Bob's Burgers has been running for, well, over 10 years at this point. So yeah, it feels like, for being one of like the breakout hits of like Fox trying to find like a new animated sitcoms to put on their block. This one is undoubtedly a hit. So what do you do? Well, the next big thing that you do is you make a movie. So of course, there's a big question here, which is like, does Bob's Burgers warrant a movie? And what I mean by that is, and I'm sure most people know what I'm inferring to when I say this, but is there enough here to warrant a film with what you see on the screen that you couldn't get on the small screen? And the answer is kind of yes and no. Here's the thing. It feels kind of like what you'd expect for a currently running animated TV series going to the big screen. So of course, like the obvious example, something like the Simpsons movie, or something like I was thinking of like My Little Pony when that went into an animated film, mostly because I believe they're using like the same animation software of like Toon Boom Harmony. So yeah, like the big question is like, what can you get in this film that you can't get in the show? And I felt like the Simpsons movie did an okay job with that because they gave you like a little bit of cussing here, they gave you some nudity here. And the thing is, I don't want to make it seem like Bob's Burgers needs to do that because it doesn't seem to kind of be in like their wheelhouse of being like that kind of like shocking humor. Because like the main draw of like Bob's Burgers has always been like the kind of like the somewhat improv. I believe it's called like retro scripting that Lauren Bacard was working on with stuff like like stuff like Home Movies and Dr. Katz, where characters would talk over each other. And have that overlapping dialogue effect where they get kind of improv some of the lines. And I don't know if that works as well for a film because like I think here's the thing, like production wise, the film looks immaculate. And on that level, if you want to just see like Bob's Burgers with like a bigger production budget, like with more musical numbers, more fluid animation, then yeah, that film delivers on it. But in terms of like a bigger story that you can explore with the animated sitcom, it just feels kind of more like an extended episode or like a handful of episodes, which for some like fans of the show, I'm sure that's fine. But if you're kind of like okay with Bob's Burgers, you might be seeking a little bit more here. So the overall narrative is basically that, as the trailers have implied, Bob is the owner of his family's burger shop, voiced by H. John Benjamin, again, is facing another hardship. He's behind on loan payments and he needs to make some extra cash so that he can afford to have his business stay open and be able to afford the place where he lives. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that goes wrong. Business isn't picking up. There's a sinkhole that opens right in front of their restaurant. And to complicate matters, there's a murder mystery happening around town. So basically, Bob and his wife Linda, voiced by John Roberts, once again giving endless exuberance here. They basically try to find a way to make the loan payments because that's like they basically try to find like a new way to sell burgers outside of their shop, which they've kind of done before. Like you keep feeling like, okay, I feel like they might have done this plot before because I remember like they did have like a food truck episode, and here they have kind of like a food cart episode, it seems like. So while that's going on, the Belcher kids of like Tina and Jean and Louise, they take it upon themselves to solve the murder that's happened in their town. Basically, somebody was murdered, I believe, like they say, like 6 years ago, and they're trying to figure out who did it. Now, here's the thing: this would actually be like a really great story that would incorporate like every character within Bob's Burgers, because there's a fairly big assortment of characters here. Not quite as big as like The Simpsons, but big enough where you could have fun just pushing out all these different characters onto the screen. And sadly, the film doesn't do that. Like I said, it would be really cool if like all of them were suspects, because then you have this kind of like, who shot Mr. Burns type deal. So you have a little bit more intrigue. But unfortunately, they kind of narrow it down to like just a handful of characters immediately who did it, and don't really explore any of the other characters. So if you were hoping to see like every Bob's Burgers character ever, you're probably not going to see them in this film. Or if you do, you're going to see them in a very reduced role, unfortunately. Um, Thankfully, like the murder mystery itself isn't that engaging or that clever, but thankfully there's like a lot more going on with the characters where it feels like just it feels almost kind of like the lattice for having all these different like character dynamics and these character arcs. Because all the other Belcher kids have a great arc here. Like Tina wants to hook up with her crush. Jean wants to become a rock star by basically inventing a new instrument out of I believe it's made out of like spoons, rubber bands, and a napkin holder, which is perfectly in his character. And then Louise basically just wants to find a way to be more mature, to not be recognized as kind of like the baby, and trying to figure out a way to not be seen as like not just be seen as a kid anymore. Basically, she wants to grow up, essentially. And on that level, like in terms of like developing the characters and finding like a family dynamic between them, the film does pretty good with this. Like it does have those obligatory moments where like the family feels at their lowest, where it doesn't feel like they're going to survive, and they make these kind of like emotional reveals and have like this very like sincere and heartfelt discussion about what it is to meet a family. And it would seem sappy if not for the fact that, like, most of the time Bob's Burgers always kind of has like this level of cynicism running throughout, mostly because of like Bob's kind of like what's like the word here, kind of like straight man type comedy to him, or that kind of like low trying to struggle with the word here, but basically like his comedy is very like kind of like low voice and kind of like passive aggressive type comedy. And it was really nice to kind of have like that bigger connection between the family here, where it does feel like the Belchers bond. But like I said, that kind of feels like what you expect from an animated sitcom making like the jump to a film, which yes, of course I admit this is not a very common genre. You don't see this as often. Like we never got like a King of the Hill film. Family Guy had kind of a direct-to-video film, which was like it just felt like a collection of episodes. In fact, they diced it up into episodes. So, but yeah, I think there's just enough here to warrant the longer narrative, and that there's just enough going on with the characters here where it's interesting that they can hold the screen here. Obviously, the comedic timing between them all is pitch perfect. It works just as well as it did on the show, which I'm sure is going to be, which is both like, it's both a strength and a weakness for this, is that, yeah, the biggest strength is like all that kind of like retro scripting charm that came from the characters from the show is still here. The bad news is that's kind of all you get. You don't get very many surprises in their dialogue or anything that they do. The biggest thing that you're going to get out of this film is just the production values. Like I said, there's a lot more musical numbers, and while the musical sequences, that they're not really earworms, like that I can't quite recall. Like I know I saw this film like over a week ago, but there's not a lot that I can recall from some lyrics. I can recall what the songs were about. Like there are ones about carnies and Luis wanting to grow up, and there's a song about looking forward to a better day, but I can't quite recall the lyrics, despite how kind of bouncy and catchy they try to make it. The other interesting thing to note about the musical sequences is that like the animation is a lot more fluid in those sequences. Like obviously the animation throughout has been upped in detail and budget, and by that I mean basically like the characters have more shadows, they might have a little bit richer color, but also in the musical sequences the characters have a lot more fluid movement where they get really into dancing, which I gotta admit it's a little surreal to watch. Like we've seen like characters like Tina do dances and stuff like that. They've always kind of been awkward though. And I kind of like from that limitations of like that having the kind of like Toon Boom animation where they're kind of like have like this almost kind of like jerky nature to them. I kind of love that. But watching like a pear-shaped kind of like out of shape character like Bob doing these very like coordinated dance sequences took a little bit of getting used to. It was odd, but after a while you get used. It's like, okay, this is kind of like an adorable little bit of like surrealism going on here with the animation. I could kind of dig it. And throughout the film, it's just like I kept waiting for like a big laugh to come, and it really didn't. It just felt like watching a handful of decent Bob's Burgers episodes, like where the jokes are okay. They're staged clever enough where I kept smirking and maybe chuckling here and there, but there was never like a moment of surprise, like I said, like anything like in the Simpsons movie that catches you off guard, or just like a really perfectly written gag that just made me just laugh out loud. And sadly, yeah, that didn't happen here. So it's kind of tough to recommend this film. Like, obviously, if you're a Bob's Burgers fan and you're a completionist, definitely go check this film out. It does match all the stuff that you love about the show, and does increase the animation budget, and gives you more musical sequences. But if you're hoping for something more that you wouldn't get out of the show in terms of just like the comedy, or the writing, unfortunately, it doesn't really feel like you get that much out of the film. So yeah, like it's a tough call. Like, I would say, like, if you're a big Bob's Burgers fan, then definitely go check this out. But if you're kind of like, if you kind of watch it every now and then and you kind of dig it here and there, like I do most of the time, I don't really think there's a big enough reason to run out to the theater and go see it. Yeah, unless you just really want to see Bob's Burgers on the big screen with more musical numbers and strangely alluring fluid animation to these pear-shaped odd little characters. So yeah, like, if you're a big fan, go see it. But if you're not, I'd kind of wait for it to. I'd kind of wait to watch it at home, because I feel like you might enjoy it. Like, if you enjoy watching Bob's Burgers at home, you're definitely going to enjoy watching it more at home than you would in the theater for this. So nothing to run out and see immediately, but it's a decent continuation of the TV series.